there we go.
Wonderful. All right. Well, when I'm presenting like this, I can't see the chat box, so I'm going to ask if people are putting things in the chat box to let me know so I can take a look.
Aaron, I can monitor the chat box for you.
Awesome. Terrific.
Okay. So guys, without further ado, our wonderful Aaron Marsters, our assistive technology specialist. Take it away, Aaron.
All right. Thank you. Well, today I'm going to be talking with you and working with you all on different assistive technology services for students that are protected under Section 504. And where this is coming from is I've been working with stateside assistive technology specialists to develop a set of 504 quality indicators for assistive technology to really help provide focused direction of what quality looks like, where to go, and kind of how do we prioritize resources. And within the notes that within the notes within your Google site, I've put a lot of links to things in there. So as I'm going through today, the link to the presentation along with a lot of these resources are put in there for you to reference later. So as an example, these are the quality indicators in their entirety. There's 7 indicators. Today, I have chosen to focus primarily on one subsection of the first indicator and really helping you become more aware of the readily available tools within our agency that can help make the school environment more accessible for some students. I'm going to preface this by saying in this hour, you're not going to become an expert with everything. The goal for me is for when you're sitting in 504 meetings and helping facilitate the conversations, that you have an awareness of general features and have an awareness of some of the questions you might ask. So to start out with, I'm going to ask if you had to rate the kind of the AT process within the 504 process within your school, a lot of processes there, how would you rate that? And so in the comment box, if you just wouldn't mind, how do you see things running at your school?
Okay, guys, in the chat, he's talking about if you pull up the chat, if you'll just answer the question in the chat box.
So I'm pulling up the chat here. So you go to the chat function and you can type in, good for Ramstein, okay. Okay, how does Aspen work? Okay, not well, all right. Some more just the mechanics of the technology in general. Okay, well, thank you, Patty and Amy, for chiming in and letting me know how things are going over there. All right, anybody else? Okay, I'm going to move on then. So again, trying to get some participation here, what are some common questions about assistive technology that you typically encounter in the 504 process? And this is really helpful for me because I don't sit in on a lot of 504 meetings. And so what questions are coming up? And again, you can either unmute yourself since we have such a select few folks here today and you can talk directly to me, or feel free to put it in the chat box.
Gina Gass says hers is working great. She's at RIS. I mean, RES. No,
okay,
Launchstool. Sorry.
One of those places.
One of those places. And then somebody else said, Ann Hubbard said, oh, they're here.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. I'm tracking now with the comments. Okay. So any common questions or anything that comes up when you're in the 504 regarding AT? Again, feel free to unmute yourself or write it in the comment box. And if there are no questions, then let me know too. That gives me some information as well.
Aaron, I did have an email question from a counselor, Joseph Mee, out in the East, who is asking, he would love some information specifically about Google Write for a couple of his students. So don't know if you could address
Yep,
that
and
one.
we're going to talk about that a little bit today. So, all right, Ann, well, sorry about the technical issues, and I definitely understand, but glad you're able to participate and at least let me know that. So, all right, so I will be talking about Read and Write along with a lot of other tools today. And so I haven't really seen any other questions that come up. Feel free as I continue to go on to put any questions in the chat box, or feel free again to unmute yourself. But I'm going to go ahead and move through some of this content. So just as a broad overview, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but I wanted to speak to the fact that, we have all students attending DoDEA schools. We have some students with disabilities that have no 504 services or protections, accommodations. And then we have IDA eligible students, so special education students who require accommodations along with specialized instruction. And so what we're going to be really focusing on today then are the 504 students. And again, just as a broad comparison, we're really with the 504, we're really just looking at providing access to the curriculum. And it's a civil rights law trying to stop discrimination versus the federal special education disability law where services are in place. And of course, as we know that there are specific categories for IDEA eligibility, while with 504 protections, a student can have any disability as long as it's interfering with that ability to learn in the general ed setting. So the 504 being a little bit broader with that. And as we see some students coming into our DoDEA schools, these might be students that might have a disability identification of dyslexia, dysgraphia, some of these other things, but that yet they're not qualifying for IDEA specialized instruction through special ed, but they still need some accommodations. So that's really kind of the focus today is looking at some of those sorts of things. I do want to address some common myths that I do see within the schools and with parents, with students and service providers. And it's this idea that if we provide assistive technology, it's providing an unfair advantage. And really that's anything but the truth. If for a student that has a disability, we've already identified as part of being on a 504, they have a disability that's providing access, it's preventing access to important life events. And so the assistive technology is just available then to help remove that barrier to instruction, or that barrier to access. Just like if you can see me talking right now, I have my glasses on. The glasses aren't giving me any kind of advantage. They don't make me see better than the average person. They're just allowing me to see things as well as somebody without poor eyesight could. So along those lines, we're just providing the tools to help that student have access. There's also some things, well, if we give him the AT, he's going to be lazy. If he can type it, if he can listen to it, if he can do whatever, he's getting off easy. We need, we're limiting what he can do. And that's not the case. Typically what assistive technology does is it really increases that student's ability to work on some of the higher level stuff. So instead of spending all their cognitive resources, their effort and energy on just the basics, they're able to now really focus in on the higher level thinking, or they're able to do more in less time. And so we don't really see that happening with motivation. I get this a lot where, I don't like books, audiobooks. It's not as good as reading, and I have some people send me articles talking about that kids that listen, it's a different experience. And I don't disagree with that at all. But for some students where print text is a barrier, listening to books is a way for them to still have access to that content Allows them to access to the vocabulary and to some higher level ideas that their reading abilities might not be letting them, or their reading disabilities might not be allowing them to do. So really, as we think about reading, it's something we do. We read a book, or listening, it can be a more passive activity, but we're really helping the students make it more active by thinking about the process, by thinking about the content, by pairing the listening with having a visual to go with it. So we're really trying to combine a lot of different hearing, seeing, a lot of modalities there to help that student access the curriculum. Another thing that I often hear is that, we have the term digital natives, or our kids have just grown up with technology, and we think if we just give it to them, they'll just magically figure out how to use it and use it effectively and strategically within the scope of a classroom. And that is not true. We typically find that we have to have specific steps, strategies, interventions to teach that student the right time to use that tool, how to use that tool, how to troubleshoot that tool. So if the 504 team is just thinking, well, we gave it to the kid, that's step one, but there does need to be a conversation and a plan about how are we teaching that student how to use that tool. And it doesn't have to always be a real complex plan, but at least make sure we're addressing that. A question that is sometimes asked of me is, what is a reasonable accommodation or a reasonable AT accommodation? And this when I'm looking at this, is we really don't want to have the AT accommodation place undue burden or a fundamental altercation on what we're offering or doing. And that's what I'm trying to show you today as we go through some of the tools, is we have access to so many different tools and so many different accessibility features that really should not be placing any undue burden, cost, or major shift in what the students are doing. It's just allowing them the flexibility to use some of these different accessibility options to help support access to the curriculum and bypassing that disability.
Aaron,
so,
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
let's say a student needed something, some AT accommodation or modification that is just an SST, not a 504 or IEP. Do SST students, as we go up the intervention, like tier 2 intervention, can we access AT?
Well, 90% of what I'm going to show you today is just widely available. We call this term universally designed. Most any kids can access 90% of the tools that I'm showing you today. I'm really trying not to show you the real specialized stuff, because for most of our kids with accommodations on 504 or SST, it's just making use of the tools that we already have.
That's
and
awesome.
we're a busy agency. The teacher's under a lot of pressure, learning a lot of different things right now. And so my hope today is to just show you some of the features that they might not be aware of, that you might not be aware of, but that are widely available across. It doesn't matter what the disability is or what process they're in.
Thank you. That's awesome.
Okay. So, and we're going to spend some more time in our follow-up webinar really talking about the process of collecting data, determining, is it want, is it a need, really having to go into the more of the nuts and bolts of the process. But today, the main focus is just kind of increasing your awareness of some tools. So I do have a couple resources that I want to mention and highlight. I'm going to bring some things over here. One is I created a few years ago an assistive technology consideration support tool. And what it does is it goes through typical problems students might have in reading, some standard tools that we might use to remediate that or to support that. We have some common accommodations and modifications, and then just a brainstorm of potential AT solutions.
Awesome.
I'm not a huge fan of checklists and things like this, because sometimes I feel like we just go shopping and we stop using data and really discussing. But this is a nice tool to help increase awareness and start conversations. And so you do have that linked in the show notes, is this assistive technology consideration tool, where you can go through sample reading and writing tasks, spelling tasks, math, studying and organization, listening, oral communication, recreation and leisure. This was designed with special education in mind, but a lot of these things can be then transferred over to that 504 process or the SST process of potential interventions, accommodations, and modifications to try. So I wanted to make sure that you were aware of that resource as we move forward, and that this is something that you could reference at any time. Another thing I want to reference is, at least within Europe East, we have an assistive technology lending library. Special education is the primary audience and the funding source for this library, but as space available, we do have some resources. And then what I've also tried to do is place common software that are within the schools, within the lending library. Not so much that I'm going to check it out to you, but just as awareness like, oh yeah, that looks really cool, this mind mapping software. Oh yeah, we have licenses of that within all the schools. Oh, this Clicker 7 looks interesting as a writing support. Oh, we have site licenses within all our schools. So this is just a way for you to increase awareness of, number one, what we have in the AT Lending Library, and two, just kind of what some of our more common resources are within the school system. Now, 504 students are eligible to check stuff out, but it is on a space available basis. With special education students taking priority, unfortunately, funding issues and all. But and I do want to say this in the beginning, if we have a student with 504 needs that needs something, then typically it's up to the school to purchase that, and that does happen. I just looked at our annual budget for DoDEA this year, and we're at $2.5 billion for the year. So if we're looking at buying a $30 Franklin speller from the school, that should not be an undue barrier to providing that accommodation, and that should not be an undue stress on the agency to do so. So as we move forward, these are some common things that I see in the school that either we purchase, we loan, we already have available sitting in a closet somewhere. Most of this stuff is already at the school. Our ETs are great resources, but typically having access to a computer doesn't have to be a one-to-one computer issued to the student all the time, but issue where does that student need to have, digital text? Where do they need to be? Where do they benefit from writing, or they need that spell check? They need the digital calendar. They do everything on Google because they lose all their papers, and if they can put it in Google Drive, they don't lose anything. So how do we provide access to that? And typically the schools do have laptops that they can strategically issue. If you're looking like, how does that work? You want to really look at the technology committee at that school and how they're allocating technology, communicating to the tech committee, your ET, your principal, letting them know of the needs of the student. And remember, if we're putting it in a 504 plan, we're saying that there is a legal precedence that we need to provide that feature. We have a lot of kids that break arms, hurt hands, have fine motor issues, and if we're using the laptop and the trackpad might not be accessible to everybody. So sometimes a mouse can be an accommodation, a trackpad, some sort of device that just allows easier access to that computer that has all those features we need. That can become the accommodation for that student. We do have students that if you are using text-to-speech a lot or speech recognition, they need access to a headset and a microphone. Sometimes with our kids, especially our older students, they're more comfortable bringing in their own stuff, their own headset, because it's more comfortable. That's fine. As long as it's fine with you, as long as they have it and provides access, terrific. But if not, we do need to make sure that we're providing something so they can listen to text, or if they're using speech recognition or recording audio notes, things of that nature, that we do provide a microphone. Again, these typically run about $15 to $20, and if that's the barrier, if not having one at your school is a barrier to this kid accessing his curriculum and instruction within our agency, then that's something we need to address. I have students that might have a difficult time reaching a traditional keyboard, and they do better by being able to have something up close and being able to type with their thumbs, or I've had some students with they don't have full function of their hands, and we're able to use modified keyboards to help with that. On that line, we do have touch screens within the schools. That can be a purchase. These are about a $200 purchase. We don't need to have special IT permission to buy touch screens. They can be available for some of our students with more of those fine and gross motor needs. It doesn't always have to be high tech. Our occupational therapist at the schools within Europe East anyways, have a pretty large selection of slant boards, pencil grips, adaptive pens. For some students, that's all that's necessary. Other students, we have a special adapted paper that has raised lines, has maybe larger lines, printing out different grid paper where the student puts a letter in each grid. That can sometimes help with spacing, with formatting, and just some simple things. If we're doing math problems, just rotating the paper so there's columns, that can sometimes help students. Using virtual manipulatives or real manipulatives to help show work, develop that understanding. Calculators are a big one. Sometimes we have students that have low vision that don't require any specialized instruction, and so they just might have something to magnify their work, and it could be something fancy that is a digital magnifier, or they could be using just a magnification bar. I do have a couple students in the district that with low vision on 504 plans that are using iPads to access the curriculum. They are taking pictures of everything, blowing it up. They're using it as a magnification device. They are being able to access their Google and have it all magnified within the device itself. So we do have some students doing that. I also have some students out there on 504 plans using sound field systems. This is typically with students with ADHD actually, because we do find for some students that having an amplification can really help with kind of the auditory processing and being able to attend and pay better attention in class. So these are some common hardware items. Things like the sound field system are loaned from the Lenny Library, or if you have an HI teacher within the area, we sometimes loan through them. The iPads are specifically identified at the school level for needing, and normally in coordination and collaboration with myself and the VI teacher, and then the school purchases those. Some of these other things we loan, and sometimes we just immediately purchase. The laptops, we do not buy special laptops for special ed or 504. They come out of the school technology, the allocation that the school has. I do have a couple things like this for loan, the headsets, but I support 32 schools, and so I provide a loaner, but ultimately it really is up to the school to start making some of these types of purchases. Now we're getting more into the software and the available features for everybody. And this is where I'm going to start showing you some things to kind of give you an overview of what's available. We have a tool called Read and Write for Google, and it is a purple toolbar that comes up that is in our extensions within Google Chrome. And what I'm doing is I'm purposely showing you the free version, and what it does is it just reads a web page. Now, if we need to have students on 504 that need to have the ability to annotate on worksheets and things like that within Google Chrome, or they need some of the advanced study tools, we are allowing the premium version on a case-by-case basis. But if all they are requiring is reading support and having the web page read to them, the free version does that. And the reason I'm highlighting the free version is because that's, again, accessible for everybody from general ed to special ed. So I do have a video. It's a 2-minute video that's linked within the presentation on Read and Write, and it does a far better job of kind of highlighting the features than I can. But I recommend watching that. I would play it, but I don't know if the audio is going to come through on our webinar. So I'm going to kind of highlight some of the basic features as we keep moving along. Another program we have is called Clicker 7. It is a writing software that we have site license for most our schools and the elementary school, most of the elementary schools within Europe East. And what you see is they have word banks, they have picture supports, they have word prediction. It reads back the text as they're writing. If they can't read the words, they right-click on it. It has word prediction, which really helps with spelling. For kids that quite aren't ready for speech recognition, but we want to get them to be able to speak and tell us what they know, it allows voice notes. For kids with ADHD or processing problems where they're having a hard time remembering directions, remembering what to do, sometimes the teachers will record notes and the student that can then listen to them over and over again as they're working on their writing. Has graphic organizers for kids that struggle with organization or motivation. Has different accessible books that can be drafted. has a lot of different pre-made literacy activities, has on-screen keyboards with word prediction. It's one of our most powerful accessibility tools at the elementary level. And again, we have site licenses at the elementary schools. We even have home licensing for if the student is really benefiting from it and wants to write at home, we can grant them a take-home license. So this is something that is very powerful. I'm going to highlight Read and Write here. I'm going to click on my purple puzzle piece, and you see that I am getting this toolbar that has most of it grayed out. That lets me know that I'm just using the free version. But if I was a student and I needed access to this website, I'm going to use this hover speech. And I just hover my mouse over the word. And in my headset right now, I can hear it reading aloud to me. I don't think you can hear that. But a couple of things that I want to point out is that we really like it when kids can see the words being read aloud with, we call this dual format, where it's highlighting and you're hearing it at the same time. So we're kind of getting that multimodality input for that student, and we find that really helps comprehension versus just hearing it read aloud without any kind of visual to support with. So within this, I've shown you Clicker 7, some of the main features, highlighting some of the tools within Read and Write for Google, which are just the basics right now, which is the hover speech and read aloud. Students on 504 plans, if they have a reading disability such as dyslexia, and it's preventing access to reading, and so we see this a lot from Texas. Kids coming in with dyslexia diagnoses, but they're not qualifying for IDEA special education due to our eligibility requirements. They still might be eligible for something called Bookshare, and Bookshare is through Department of Education. It is a federally funded program which offers nearly 700,000 books free of charge for students with dyslexia, learning disabilities, visual impairments. So we have some of our low vision students using Bookshare. Some of our students have dyslexia diagnoses using Bookshare. ADHD does not qualify, autism does not qualify unless there's concurrent reading disability. And this comes down to copyright law. It's not a DoDEA policy. It is, we have 700,000 books free of charge because the publishers have agreed to provide this as a way to provide access to individuals with disabilities, and they're going off of old qualification standards. There are lobbyists out there trying to expand it to other disability categories, but right now we are limited to reading disabilities, visual impairments, or physical impairments that might prevent me from physically turning the pages of a book. Now with 504 students, they're not eligible to access the Bookshare textbooks. Again, it comes down to copyright. Only students on IEPs can access that, but they can access all the Harry Potters, all of the fiction, nonfiction books that might help support them with accessing the curriculum or reading for fun, reading for pleasure. So what kids would do is they get signed up for Bookshare, and then they can choose to read on a computer. They can read it on a tablet. Has highlighting, reads aloud. So this is really a terrific resource for kids that qualify. I have helped students over the years on 504 plans get access to this, and it's really just an amazing tool for those kids who have print, paper-based barriers to reading. If you need to sign up a student for this, the first point of contact I would recommend at your school is talk to your special ed teacher, because I've spent a lot of time working with them, getting them more comfortable and familiar with Bookshare. And if they're unsure how to proceed, then of course reach out to me. So now we're getting into some of the common curriculums that we have within DoDEA. And the first thing is that most students access curriculums through Clever, and that's how I've accessed a lot of the curriculums today. As the counselor or school psych, you're really not, again, you don't need to be the expert in the curriculums. You just need to know some of the main features. And you might not even need to have access to a lot of the curriculums. You just need to know the features, or you need to know who to ask the questions to. Typically, the general ed teachers are the curricular experts for their areas. Our SPED teachers have some knowledge of the different accessibility features. Your ETs are a wonderful resource. And then the content ISSs. So if you are having a question about early childhood, ELA curriculum, if we know who that ISS, that district is, they can often provide support as well. So I'm going to show you now. This is Benchmark Advance. This is our standard K-5 curriculum. This is what a teacher would see. They have access to all these books, all the teacher resources. The students can actually have student logins, and they can access a lot of that. So a lot of times I hear, oh, we need special software for text-to-speech for this kid. He's in first grade. He's in second grade. What are we going to do? Where do we get the stuff? Well, if you look, all of these curricular resources, right now I moved to fifth grade. I'll move to second grade. I'm going to choose Unit 2. I have all these different ebooks. And so if I'm going to select an ebooks, and a student can access these with their login, and it's going to pull it up in a reader. And what this allows me to do is digital text gives me so many more options than paper text. If I'm having a hard time seeing this, I can go to a page, and I can adjust. I can magnify this to make it larger. If I need text to speech, so it's reading aloud to me, I hit the play button. And I really wish you could hear this right now, because we've paid for Benchmark Advance. It's not a computer voice going boom, boom, Dolly Madison. When it read it aloud, there's actually sound effects, and it's a professional voice actor reading this aloud. So, but I'm also getting that nice quality, that highlighting as it moves along. This is an everybody resource. This isn't a special ed 504. Any kid could be accessing this. Maybe some choose to use this feature, maybe some don't. Some kids like the feel of the book in their hand, while other kids want to access it on a computer. But this is, Benchmark Advance has all their books in ebook format with this feature of text-to-speech, being able to zoom, being able to annotate text if I need to. So this is really something that I feel like we could, K through 5, if they're using the standard curriculum, these are resources. They have Reader's Theater, where they have different parts for the different kids to read. And it has, again, professional voice actors going through the different parts, so helping those students access that and listen to it and work on that fluency. And if I have a reading disability, I can still access this content at my grade level, and my dyslexia is not going to be slowing me down. Or if I have attentional issues and just reading a book, I'm off task, I'm needing to be redirected all the time, maybe this multimedia of hearing that boom, boom, and this professional voice actor might keep me engaged a little bit longer. So I've talked about Benchmark Advance, which is our K-5 reading curriculum. Also has worksheets on there that we can bring that worksheet over. So I'm going to just highlight that for a moment. If I have a student with fine motor issues, a lot of times instead of having to take a worksheet and then I have to type on or have to handwrite and it's all scribbled and I make mistakes and somebody crosses it out and then I get grumpy, or somebody gives me a worksheet and then I have to go to the photocopier and scan it into some sort of digital format. Most all our worksheets now within our curriculums start their lives as digital content. If we save that to the Common Drive, if we save that to a Google Drive, if we email it to a student, they can then use Adobe, which is a standard software. We're not doing anything that costs extra money or providing any kind of special resource. We all have Adobe on our computers. I can directly type in the worksheet. And for some of our students, that's all they need. They need some spell check, and they need to be able to type so that they can bypass some of their fine motor pencil issues, fatigue issues, spelling issues. They don't need anything else. So what I really like is that in the past it was more difficult because we had all these paper-based books and you had to scan it, and then the scan was ugly, paper was crooked and things were grayed out, and it became difficult. But now, since most of these worksheets that the teachers are referencing are already digital, it's just moving it from one digital platform to something the student can access, like I said, the Common Drive or Google Drive. So I'm going to bring over now We're not going to save that. We're going to social studies now. Pearson Realize is our 7th and 8th grade social studies curriculum. So again, I've accessed the online book. The students have access to this. Any student has access to this. It's in that grade. You'll notice that there's a little speaker button. And so what this does, it's not quite as good as Benchmark in that it reads it aloud with a human reader, but I don't get that quality highlighting. But if I'm using my free version of Read and Write, again, nothing fancy, nothing premium, I use my hover speech.
This instrument is an early astrolabe, which helps sailors determine their position at sea.
So by using the free Read and Write, which should be as soon as your students log into Google Chrome, they should have that purple puzzle piece and they should have this free version. They just hover their mouse over what they want to have read aloud. It highlights, it reads it aloud, and they can move on. Some nice things I want to point out about some of these interactive books, aside from read aloud, is a lot of the new interactive books have these embedded videos, so I can enlarge the font if I'm having a hard time reading. So for my low vision. And then I can also just click on these links and I have access to this multimedia video that's going to give a review of the chapter and have some more engaging content. So as we're asking, like, what's the difference between a paper book and some of these digital resources? A lot of these digital resources now have embedded things like little self-checks, little flip videos, little multimedia, just instead of just reading about it, they have something that shows about it. Some of the science books now have some interactive 3D modules and stuff within the digital books that for our kids that are really working on that understanding and that access, that can be helpful. So now I'm going to switch to United States government for the high school. They access this through their Clever account or through Schoology. And, so this is the same thing that they'd have in paper copy, but they have it in digital now. And they can choose to enlarge the font. I can use my built-in functions to enlarge the document. I have a read button up here, which again is not great in that it doesn't highlight as it goes through, but it is a human reader that will read that passage aloud to me. If we felt like that, he really needs to be able to see it, I'm going to still use my hover speech. And as a sign of troubleshooting, if something doesn't work, what I always tell the kids is hit refresh. Okay.
Imagine you are in each of the situations below and you want someone in government to help you address it.
So using the free feature of Read and Write, using the digital book, I have access to the text. If I want to look up a word, I can copy. I can go into a new tab within Google Chrome. I could look up that word. I can do, for some of our students, we find if they come up to a concept they're not unsure of, they can go do a Google image search, help provide some images of that. So just by having that digital text, it just opens up a lot of doors for me to help me out. And then I have some of these multimedia, again, like why would I use the digital resource? Because I have a video here already embedded that supports what this article was talking about. So just increasing access to the content. Jumping back to elementary, math. Go Math is our primary K through 5 elementary program. So typically with math, we're looking at calculators, manipulatives, but if I have a reading or writing disability, that can also be a barrier to math. So your teachers and your students have access to whatever grade they're in. And we have all these different student editions. We have interactive. So I'm going to pull over now. I have an interactive worksheet. So you notice I have all these little speaker buttons here. It will read aloud.
14. On which day did 14.
Okay,
On
sorry.
which day did about 900 visitors come to the giraffe exhibit?
So it just read, and with a human voice, on which day did the 900 visitors come. And so if I want to write in my answers, I can then pull up the different question and I can type in the answer. So this can be really helpful, again, for my students that really struggle with that fine motor component, or if they know the math but the reading is the barrier, they can listen to the worksheet, they can type in their answers, and that's all embedded within this digital workbook that the kids can access. Something else the students can access is, I'm going to go back now to, they have some interactive components that actually has little interactive videos and interactive lessons. Again, it reads it aloud. I have a read function here.
A picture graphic when you see half a picture.
So this is good for students that might need the content presented in a different way. They might need some review, motivation. So there are a lot of, within the Go Math curriculum, there are a lot of embedded support such as text-to-speech, being able to write within the worksheets. They have videos, they have interactive components that can help kids just have access to different content than traditional lecture up at the front of the board. As I'm looking now, we're going to jump over to high school, actually 6th grade, so middle school through high school. We have HMH Collections. And HMH Collections is the primary curriculum that the students are using. And within that, again, same thing for everybody. If it's the digital text, I can enlarge it. I can annotate text. So with this one, you'll see on the side, I can go to page view and I can enlarge it here. I also have audio. So I just turned it off. The good side is, again, professional audio. So this is a play, I think Tragedy Macbeth, and so there's actually different voice actors voicing the different characters, but I'm not getting that highlighting. So if, again, the student really feels that's needed, or you feel that's needed, good old buddy free read and write Google here, hover speech.
Messenger. The king comes here tonight. Lady Nick.
So I often kind of get the fear from some of the teachers in schools that, you know, providing text-to-speech, that's a burden, that's unattainable. Well, as we're looking, all of our curriculums we have online access to, and either using the built-in features for everybody or the free features with read and write, we can easily access the text-to-speech, but they do need to have the headphones, they do need to have access to a computer, and they do need to know how to log in and be able to manage that. Some other free resources that I think are underutilized in our agency, and your media center specialist is really the person that I would go to if you have questions about this, is we have all these online databases for each one of our schools. And so you just check the school you want, you click on their main databases, and it provides digital text. You can search sometimes by Lexile level or reading level. It has built-in text-to-speech for a lot of them, has some interactive components. And so, for example, I'm looking at Mac and VIA right now, and I have all these different online databases. So if you look at Tumblebooks Premium is a lot. It's kind of like Raz Kids. So a lot of our teachers that were upset that when Raz Kids went away, Tumblebooks is a little bit like that, with interactive online books with human readers, text-to-speech, all of that. If I'm looking at supporting, science curriculum, I can look at my database here. It's going to log me in. I can choose my content. I can search for my content. Has built-in text-to-speech with highlighting. It's tabbed, so for some of our students, helps with that organization. Has some citations, articles, activities, video supporting this. So this is just available to everyone. And as again, we're saying, how do we provide access to the curriculum for students with maybe some 504 needs? These are some things that I think we can make sure that we highlight. And if we're saying that there's nothing for that student access, then we need to make sure we're looking at this. So we have different ebooks. You have different search functions. This is another one for that I accessed through the database that was focused on STEM. And so you can pick your topic, have it read aloud, has integrated activities.
Technology.
So I'm kind of going fast through this because, again, I don't need you to be the expert on how to access all this, but I do need you to know, like, oh yeah, there's a place that we have audiobooks, and there is a place that we have all these digital resources, and these are some of the features that are on there. So, you know, to help with turning the page, help with the vision, help with the decoding, help with looking up words, all of that when it's in digital format gives us a lot of options that a print-based book does not. Something that I want you to be aware of is speech recognition sometimes comes up within 504, and we think we have to have specialized software for speech recognition. I will say you do need to have a microphone. If you're just if you're just saying the student needs to use the built-in microphone in the laptop, it's not going to be effective. It's going to frustrate the student, and it's not going to be an effective accommodation. They really do need to have some sort of external microphone. I recommend USBs. But if you look within Google Docs under Tools, there's something called voice typing. This is a test of Google voice typing. I can use this to help record my thoughts without having to type on a computer, period. You'll notice sometimes it will make the correct punctuation, and other times it will actually type out the whole word, period. And so what we want to make sure we teach the kids to do is, instead of going nuts, they can still type. Or I could look here and it could say, did I mean, period. So I can right click. It has built-in grammar check, has built-in spell check, and this is just within Google, nothing fancy. I do like Google because it's available on all machines, and I find, again, 504 typically is a lot of our students with ADHD, and they typically losing work. And so the nice thing about Google is that if it's in their drive, it's always going to stay there. Now we do need to help them, make sure they know how to give it a name, how to search. It'd be nice if we could show them how to do some Google Drive maintenance, put it in the correct folder. Again, your ETs would be a terrific resource for this. But as people are sometimes coming to me, oh, we need special stuff for speech recognition, this is a great one. They will need to learn how to use it appropriately, and I will say that speech recognition can be more restrictive because typically in a lot of classroom environments, it's too noisy in the classroom for it to be effective, or it's too quiet and they're too self-conscious, so they actually want to go someplace else and do it. But this is something I typically will show a lot of our students for home use. You know, hey, let's outline here at school, or why don't you get some ideas down here, and then when you're at home tonight, you can use speech recognition and really kind of flesh it out. So these are some things that I just want you to make sure you're aware of. I'm also a big fan within Google of the Explore feature, which is, again, built into Google Docs and allows you to search something. So if I'm looking up, you know, dogs, if I find that I'm going to, you know, this pet finder is something that I want to reference, I can immediately cite that as a footnote. So for a lot of our students that struggle with correctly citing their work, I can do some research. I can look up the content in a separate tab. But when I go back here, I can, by clicking on this little cite as a footnote tab, I can have that immediately cited within my document. And so you can also see if you want that MLA, APA, or Chicago. So these are just some general tools that are available to everyone that I think are good for folks to know about. I've already talked about Adobe. We have Adobe on all our computers, and Adobe is a terrific way to annotate PDFs, to write on top of PDFs. So if you have a kid that's been given a lot of worksheets and they can't really use handwriting or their spelling's so atrocious, they can type it on top using Adobe PDF. They can type on top of that. If we find that they really need to have it within Google Drive, that's when we look at going for the full premium version of Read and Write for Google. So that will allow them to pull up that PDF online and type on there. So as we're really looking at these things, all of these things are available for everyone. You know, you see some teachers now doing some things with Flipgrid or something called Seesaw, which is students are able to record videos and their voices. PowerPoint allows you to record voices, so if they have a picture, they can record themselves talking about it or a video about them talking about it. So it allows them to demonstrate their understanding of the content by maybe bypassing their reading or writing disability. Or for our students with attentional issues or memory issues, if the teacher then records something, that student then has the ability to go back and reference that and listen to it as much as possible without having to then put undue pressure on the teacher to be there to do all that. So we've talked about where do you go for help. Your special education staff does have some knowledge about this. For curriculum, really your general educators hopefully have that knowledge, and if not, you know, talking to that district content ISS. I do find sometimes where people are like, well, something's not working. The headset's not working. The monitor's not working. The keyboard, the software, we can't log in. And I first ask, well, have you put in a service desk ticket? Have you asked for help? No. So make sure that you are asking for help, or you're making sure the team, that 504 team, is really documenting and trying to troubleshoot it. Don't just get frustrated, but work effectively to let your administration know. If you're short on things and you haven't had, your school lacks headphones, your school is having problems with the computers, I'm not saying your administrator is going to have an immediate fix, but they can't fix it if they don't know about it. So make sure that we're having those conversations with admin. Your media center specialists are terrific when it comes to all those databases. I am happy to be a resource for 504 teams, but I don't want you to be frustrated as I'm supporting 32 schools. I want you to be able to go local first and get maybe the immediate support you need with your local resources. And if they're having issues, then I'm happy to jump in as well. And as we're kind of wrapping up here, you know, what are your next steps? I've thrown a lot of information at you today. Again, your goal is not to learn to be experts in using it, but to just be aware of some of the features that are out there. How might you use some of this information? You can either unmute your microphone or put it in the chat box.
Aaron, this is Ann Hubbard of Intermediate.
Hi, Ann.
Hi, so thanks so much for having this today. The information you gave, we also heard a bit about it. We had our CSI day here at Ramsey Intermediate, but this is a really powerful, short and sweet presentation that I think really is valuable for the faculty and all the schools to know what's going out and what's available.
And I am working with the content ISSs to make short 20-minute, you know, everything a SPED teacher might need to know about the accessibility features within a software. So I'm making those. I think this is being recorded, but if there's an opportunity to talk to your staff and we can make that work, I'd be happy to address that as well.
Okay, thanks. So I think it's not just the special ed staff or 504 group. It's like everybody should know. Yeah. Okay, thanks so much.
Yeah, terrific. And I saw that there were some questions about how do we access the accommodation guide.
Right.
And that was, I put that in the show notes on that website. There's a Google document on the website.
Okay. Right. Good.
And
Thanks.
a trackpad is just looks like a piece of paper that you just touch. A trackpad is how you use a mouse, is what you use on a keyboard on a laptop to use the mouse. You use your finger to just drag your finger around, and that acts as a mouse. So I have some kids that struggle with controlling their mouse using a trackpad. And I have other kids that they can't use a mouse, but they can use a trackpad. So it just all depends on the student.
Erin, I just wanted to say to everybody that what we're going to do, because this was so informational. Kay and I are sitting here going, oh my God, this is such cool information. We all need this. So we totally agree with Ann and probably everybody on this call that this is just a small population that needs to hear this. So what we're going to do is we're going to send the link out to this recording. And we'll also send the link out to the information in the drive. and to anything that you've sent us with this.
So I put notes. I saw you had the agenda within your student support service website.
Yep.
And so I went ahead and put in a lot of the links. So I had the link to the presentation
That's awesome.
today. So it should all be there. So for those of you that are like, I was talking too fast or I was referencing things that that you weren't able to take notes on, all of the main links and resources are here. I do ask if you all are willing and able today to go to that site and click on the participant feedback. In fact, I'll even put that in the comment section. But I am always trying to improve the information, the content, and the format of what I'm doing and supporting. So that short form would be much appreciated for those of you that joined me today.
Awesome. And I want to apologize. I realized right after I started recording that the recording is cutting off the left side of your screen. So as Kay and I become better at this, we'll get better at the recording part too. But we're just really, really pleased. Thank you, Erin, so much. We really
Well, this is great. It's really helpful for me to have you all here where I can have a single conversation instead of 7 or 8 individual conversations.
Right.
So thank you.
And November
thank you for being willing to collaborate.
November 22nd is when Erin's going to do a follow-up. Same time, correct? 11:30 to 12:30. So again, we'll send that out to everyone with the link. And so we hope that even more people will participate. I think this was great participation to have at least 10 counselors and psychs on the call with short notice and also being in the middle of the flippin' day. So just shows our eagerness to learn new stuff.
And school psychs and counselors, if you have specific questions or things you want me to address, because right now I am I'm stabbing in the dark here, what you know and don't know. Shoot me an email, let me know, and I'm happy to tailor some of this information more towards your specific needs. But without really knowing some of that, I'm just trying to hit kind of the broad strokes. So
awesome.
Let me know, and I'm happy to adjust.
Thank you, Erin. We really appreciate it. And with that, we're going to end this. What I'd like to do, because I know you guys all need to get back to work, I think rather than talk more about other topics, Kay and I may send out a short survey to everybody and just ask, are there other topics that other people would want? And she and I are absolutely willing to start doing these, and as long as we record them and we'll start putting them on that website, they're great for everybody. So again, thanks everybody for attending, and look out for that survey, and don't forget to give Erin your feedback.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks, guys. Have a great weekend.
All right.